Welcome to the new semester, all of you. It feels good to be finally addressing you on a platform. Uh, Today, since it's the first class, I am trying out a way. I am having this Zoom session recorded, and I'm going to use this video to share my screen with you. I hope it works. If it doesn't, then we'll try something else. But welcome back. I hope you're all doing well, and I honestly hope that you've been using these extremely difficult circumstances in a positive manner rather than getting bogged down and feeling demotivated by the circumstances. I hope you've been making an effort to delve deep within yourselves and introspect and try to be better human beings. Uh, we are literature people, so we will of course fall back on sayings and proverbs and very idealistic approaches to life. But I have always believed that sweet are indeed the uses of adversity. So it is a good idea to think back upon the past few months and you know, uh, try to derive some kind of learning from this, make ourselves learn some lessons from this period of life. It's never going to come again, so take it as an opportunity. I wish that this COVID-19 disappears as quickly as possible and we are back to our classrooms, face to face, talking to each other, being as we were once upon a time. Now, my intention today is to introduce you to paper 2, which is Indian writing in English. And to do that, I would like to share my screen with you with a few slides. So let us begin. I hope you're able to see my screen. I am. You are screen sharing, says my monitor. Now, we begin with the title of the paper, which is Indian Writing in English. I think most of you are familiar with Indian writing in English because you've been reading authors who are of Indian origin and they write in a foreign language. They are the ones we call Indian writers in English. It can't be an Englishman writing in English. It has to be a person of Indian origin. That means either one of his parents has to be Indian for him to be actually legitimately be called an Indian writer in English. It could be people staying abroad, the Indian diaspora, anybody. Now, Indian writing in English is of fairly recent origin. It cannot boast of the kind of historical, uh, lineage that in the English literature can boast of, because Indian writing in English emerged only because of the uh, combination or because the meeting of two great cultures of the world, the Indian culture and the British culture. And all that happened when for that, we need to take a peek into history. We need to know what was the historical context of Indian writing in English. How did Indian writing in English come about in such a major manner? Now, I don't know whether you feel this or not, but I feel extremely comfortable being in this genre, because we've been studying, I've been teaching you literary movements last year, and we did a lot of, study of writers of other countries and who've been, waxing eloquent upon theories and the need for literary periods and what is the necessity for periodization, etc., etc., etc. And after all, this is our world. Indian writing is our world, and I'm so glad that it has been given. It's not till the it's not till the late 1950s that Indian writing in English actually was given as much importance as it's being given today. It's been part of the curriculum now. It's people like K.R.S. Iyengar and Meenakshi Mukherjee who've been responsible for bringing it so much into focus. And so when we take a peek into the historical context, we need to know what exactly happened in the past and that has to go back to the East India Company, which was issued the charter in the year, it was I think on the 31st of December 1600, when Queen Elizabeth I issued a charter, that means a legitimate right to a certain group of London merchants to come to the Indian Ocean in order to do business. They were supposed to be traders. They were supposed to be involved themselves in commercial enterprise, dealing with spices, tea, opium, saltpeter, indigo dye, etc. Of all the richness of the land, and that included our Indian subcontinent. It included the Southeast Asia. It included a lot of countries of the East. Now, when the Queen of England allowed these people to come to these areas of the world um, as traders, as the aim was actually to indulge in commercial activity. The aim was not really to eye the territory, which eventually it became so because these East India Company people, once they gained hold upon the land of these areas, they started eyeing the territory. And the territory in those times was not really in the most ideal situations because it was a time of decline. The Mughal dynasty was declining vastly. There was a lot of treachery. There was a lot of backbiting. There was a lot of political conspiracies happening. Nobody was united. Everybody was ruling on their own. Each one guarding his own territories, eyeing the other. A lot of jealousies, a lot of insecurities. So it was a good time for the British East India Company to cash in on. So what they did was they they started a kind of a rule of subordination where they started kind of perpetrating injustice upon the natives of the land. Now, this eventually grew into a state where there was a battle, and there was a battle between the Nawab of a place in West Bengal called Plassey, which was actually not Plassey, it was Palasi. Palasi. Palasi is actually a flower. I'll just show you the picture of the flower. This is a flower which, this is a flower, beautiful flower, and I thought it's necessary for us to indulge in a little bit of fun fact because we are also supposed to be poets and to have a leaning towards the beautiful things of life. So the fact that the Battle of Plassey was fought on a land where a lot of Palash trees grew, I thought it was necessary for you to know because it kind of alleviates the tension that you generally acquaint with war and battle. Now, the Battle of Plassey was fought between Robert Clive, who was an employee of the East India Company, and Sirajud Aula, the Nawab of a certain place called Plassey in West Bengal. And this Mughal leader was actually betrayed by somebody called Mir Zafar. And this is a painting of that. This is Robert Clive and this is Mir Zafar. And this is it's because of his treachery that actually he won this battle, the Battle of Plassey, which kind of you know strengthened their position in the Indian subcontinent over West Bengal and gradually the rest of India. Now, since we are talking about the historical context, there are other events and landmarks which you ought to be familiar with. To understand the significance of history in the rising or the emergence of a certain language called Indian Writing English, or a certain body of literature called Indian Writing English. Battle of Plassey. In the East India Company, as I mentioned earlier, the East India Company was issued a charter by Queen Elizabeth in 1600. Eventually, they came here, indulged in a lot of. It's not as if they were the first Europeans in India. Before them, they had been the Portuguese, the French, the Dutch. So many people had been coming, and each of them. It's not as if these were the ones who had actually strategized eventual dominance over the Indian subcontinent. But the others had also been trying, making their effort because the Nawab of Siraj al-Dawla was helped by the French East India Company. Now we are just going to focus on a few significant events to talk about Indian Writing English, influence to the emergence of this literature. The Charter Act of 1813 was significant, according to Gauri Vishwanathan, a literary historian and a literary critic, very well known from her essay The Masks on Conquest. And she emphasized the two very significant, eventualities of this Charter of 1830, because it was in this year that actually the British Crown kind of emphasized its supremacy over the East India Company by assuming upon itself the indirect control over Indian education. Indian education had been allowed a lot of leverage. The Indian texts, the Sanskrit texts, all the religious books had been given a kind of freedom to exist on their own. And in 1813, the British Parliament passed this charter saying that it kind of assumes responsibility for the betterment of the Indian native. Because in religious instruction, moral instruction, they wanted to play a role uh, in the enhancement of the natives that they were ruling over. So they decided to allocate about a lakh of rupees per year for the betterment of the Indian native. Also, this kind of put an end to all commercial activity of the East India Company in India. It's excepting for indigo and opium that they continued to deal with. The East India Company kind of lost most of its commercial importance in this, after this charter. Now, to assume the responsibility for the natives that they were ruling upon was a major event in the history of the world, because by doing so they were kind of assuming upon themselves the position of superiority, or it's possible that they wanted to align themselves with the ones that they were governing, because they wanted to make the Indians feel comfortable, not feel threatened. And that was probably one of the reasons also why missionary activity had been controlled before the charter, and missionary activity, the control was released after this charter. That means the Christian missionaries in India were allowed to go about propagating Christianity, which they had not been allowed to earlier. Of course, under severe surveillance, it was not as if they were allowed to do just as they pleased. But prior to this, the Christian missionaries had been under, some kind of regard for the neutrality of religion. They didn't want to feel the the people who were governed by them to feel threatened that they were probably facing some kind of extinction of their religion and their religious exclusiveness. So they wanted to make them feel comfortable. But it is after the 1813 charter that the Christian missionaries were allowed to go about propagating the religion, not really, not really trying to threaten to convert people into Christianity at that point, but then they were allowed a certain kind of freedom, which when the interaction is allowed, obviously you are also given more access to texts and body of literature and kind of learnings and kind of scientific facts that actually rule over the British kingdom in those times. Indians were probably given more access to that kind of knowledge after this. Now, after this charter, we need to talk about the English Education Act 1835, which was a complete, it was known for the uh, man called Thomas Babington Macaulay and his minutes on education, because by this legislation he kind of emphasized on the importance of the Indian natives being taught English with an aggression, because according to him, he felt that he had been interacting with people well versed in not only in Sanskrit texts and Islam texts, but they are very familiar with the Indian literature, and they had apparently propagated the fact that a single shelf of European literature would be enough for all the literature and the texts that existed in India, all the classical texts of Indian origin. Now, this was not only a very humiliating kind of an indictment, but this became a law eventually because in 1835 he emphasized upon the importance of the medium of instruction becoming English, the less importance, less money to be spent on the madrasas and the Sanskrit colleges in Banaras and Delhi and in Calcutta. Uh, he wanted that people should start, uh, you know, being trained to act as the mediators between the governed and the governing authorities. They did not want that uh, Indians should be allowed to learn what they learned previously because apparently, according to them, that was of no importance. And for to enable the British people to rule in a more efficient manner, it was necessary for them to be instructed about various facets of knowledge, science, literature, classical literature, moral instruction, all of it to be done in English and European literature because this is actually which was the divisive factor between the two cultures. They considered this to be too inferior to be allowed to prevail upon the Indian subcontinent. And this is very significant because of certain words used by Thomas Babington Macaulay. He said that we need a class of persons, Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. And this kind of nailed the coffin. And it's after this that English instruction began with a lot of force, and people of Indian origin, Indian people, Indian natives started being educated. And it became necessary also because there were some people who felt it was necessary for their young sons to learn this alien tongue because that was supposed to be a mark of success. Maybe they would reach places only if they learned this foreign tongue. Now, when we talk about the foreign tongue, I think it is necessary for me to mention this, the anxiety of Indianness. This was the title of an essay written by another very famous literary critic, uh, of, especially of Indian writing in English, called Meenakshi Mukherjee. She talks about the anxiety of Indianness. Now, if you realize, when we talk about Indian writing in English, we are talking about a language which we have adapted for ourselves, which is not our own. We're not. It's not our mother tongue. It's not something that we're born with. It's not the first word that. No, we do. I'm sure we do. Most of us are very comfortable speaking in English, but most of us are born to another language, to our native tongue, and we take to an alien tongue through English. Now, the kind of expression that we use in Indian English has a peculiarity of its own. Now, we all know about Canadian English, we know about American English, we know about Australian English, we know about the way the French speak English, the Chinese speak English, the Japanese speak English. Now, there has to be a way in which the Indians also speak English. Now, the anxiety of Indianness is a very relevant point of discussion here because in order to make our culture understood in a foreign tongue, it's not very easy. It is very beautifully summed up by the author that we're going to do soon. This is Raja Rao in his foreword for Kanthapura, where he says the telling has not been easy. To be able to speak your about your emotions, about your cultural upbringing, about your habits, about your gods, about your rituals, about your diversities, and to express it adequately for it to be understood by others, for outsiders, who view you with an alien look. It's not an easy thing to do. So this is why I think we need to talk about the anxiety of Indianness. the burden that we take on ourselves. And I'm glad that we take on this person because it makes it even more, respectable. Why? Because it's not an easy thing to do. When Indians write in a particular manner, I'm sure you're all familiar with the way we speak English. We do a literal translation of our language into English. Suppose you want to say that Patnaik man is irritating us. So you would say, she's sitting on my head. I mean, that's not how I'm actually supposed to be behaving. If I'm irritating you, I am, doing something which is mental, not something which is physical. So, but then we have our own habits of speaking English. We call the balaclava, the cap which Europeans or people in cold countries wear to cover their entire head except for their eyes. We call that a monkey cap. We say that he passed out. Now, when he passed out in the year 1944. Now he passed out. What does the person of non-Indian origin think? He will immediately think that he passed out. Maybe he needs a glass of water, a sprinkling of water on his face, because pass out means to faint. But then we have our own colloquial style of speaking English, which we transfer to our text. When we talk about our writers, who are our writers? Let's talk about the writers that are very well known. I'm not afraid I've not been able to include everybody. Let's go through these slides. We have Rabindranath Tagore, Nobel laureate. What has he won his Nobel Prize for? Which year? 1913, I think. And he won it for his book of poems, Gitanjali. Now we have Mahashata Devi, very well known for her aggressive style of writing, for the downtrodden, for the people who have been subordinated. She's Mahashata Devi, Bengali writer. This is I've chosen writers who are there in your curriculum. This is Raja Rao, one of the stalwarts of Indian writing in English. Then we have Mahesh Dattani. We are going to do final solutions by him. These are some of our writers. Now, these are not all. We have plenty more. I have just included a few. Now, these writers, if you notice, are writers who have their own style of writing. And they write about their own country, their own habits, their own culture, their own language, their own religion. We are a nation of diversities. We are a nation of plenty. We have so many to display. We have so many to declare to the entire world. So that is why probably we have a lot of accusations of pandering to the exotica starved world, because to have elephants parading in Indian streets, and to have snake charmers, and to talk about the Ganesh Chaturthi festival, and to talk about laddus, and to talk about the biryanis. It has a lot of exotica element to it, and that's probably one of the reasons why Indian writing in English has become so famous, because it's a life which people are not familiar with. So they really look forward to reading about it, and that has kind of popularized our writing to a great extent. But it is a fact that we write in our own way. We don't write English the way we're supposed to. I think there was this, I must mention this, that there, Sarojini Naidu, an equally famous for her role in the national freedom movement, as well as for her writing. And she had been told by an Englishman that I'm not very sure about who it was, but when she started writing initially, she would write about skylarks and daffodils and everything with about the foreign culture. So she was told, advised that when you're writing, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be a really good writer, why don't you write about yourself? Why don't you write about your mountains, your rivers, your lives in India? I mean, I think there's a very exotic element about it. So it's a good idea. Sarojini Naidu had been advised. I read about this in Iyinger's book somewhere. Now, when the Indians started writing in English, their writing style had a different style about it. Uh, they used more colloquial terms. They wrote like Englishmen, but their habits and their style of writing was different. So we need to focus on the lesson of uh, Raja Rao, that he in his foreword to Kantapura. Kantapura is the text that we are going to be doing. I think I will end my slides now, and we go on to talking about Kantapura eventually. Kantapura is written by Raja Rao, and it is especially more important because he kind of sets the trend in that book about the style that is adapted by an Indian writer in English. He says that the telling has not been easy because we're trying to reveal our innermost thoughts, our innermost sentiments, innermost emotions in a foreign language, in an alien tongue. So when he starts the book Kantapura, he uses the tone of a woman, an old woman, who is supposed to be the narrator of the story Kantapura. Now, we will go on to discuss this more in the next class. I hope you've been adequately informed about the historical context of Indian writing in English, and we can do more about it eventually over the next few days. Uh, I stopped my class, I stopped my video here so that we go on to. So when we talk about Kanthapura, I would like you to all have your texts with you because it is a very, it's a very story which is very very excitable because it actually panders to the foreign reader in a tremendous manner because it has the style of garrulity in it, where the narrator is speaking uh, to an audience about an event that has happened in her village many, many years back. And that is what she's trying to describe eventually. There is a movie, Kanthapura, also, which I would like to see eventually one of these days. I'll show it. Since we have this access to online, distance sharing, I would like to show you this movie, a bit of the movie of Kanthapura, kind of a documentary done by Bharatek Khoj, I think many years back. We'll do that soon. But I think it's a good idea for you to get your books ready or your PDF files or whatever and start working towards it. And we'll continue this